Hello and welcome to another Salt and Light curriculum video. My name is Christina Edmiston and I'm a minister joining you today from Kitchener in Ontario, Canada. This week we are taking a look at the third session of Unit 2, Justice for the Widow, Orphan and Stranger. That's week 7 in your written curriculum, the week called The Way We See. The story of the blind man in John chapter 9 raises such crucial and difficult questions about sin and suffering and the ways in which they are, or perhaps I should say aren't, related. The question of what causes random illness and disability and what role God has in human suffering. These are some of the most difficult and pressing questions that humanity has ever asked. And of course, as the material mentions, we live in a cause and effect worldview where we assume, or at least want to believe, all things have a cause, and we want to find that cause. We need to know why things happen and who to blame. Because existing in a world where there are random, horrible things that occur for no particular reason makes us feel fearful and out of control. But examining our spoken and unspoken assumptions about the connection between sin and suffering is crucial. Because so many people who are already suffering suffer even more when friends, family, and church members, often well-meaning, connect that suffering with sin and lay the burden of guilt on top of their already existing pain. We've got to stop doing that. And even the most polite and well-intentioned of folks do it sometimes, because we live with assumptions that are unconscious and have gone unexamined. For example, what does it mean to say, God has blessed me with good health? There's an assumption there, God causes good health. And it implies that those living with ill health have not been similarly blessed. God has withheld the blessing of good health from them. Cause and effect. Is that what we really mean to say when we want to give God thanks for the health that we do enjoy? Similarly, what does it mean to say when someone dies at a younger age that God needed an angel? A common sentiment, and perhaps it's comforting to think about. But there is a darker assumption underlying that statement, that God caused the death because God wanted that person to be with God. Cause and effect. God caused suffering and deprived the remaining loved ones of the company of that person because God wanted that person for God's self. It actually paints God in a very selfish light. Is that what we really mean to say when we're trying to comfort a grieving person? The cause and effect worldview is so ingrained in us. It's worth devoting some time to unpack this with your group. The sharing practice on page 39 is particularly rich when it comes to this issue. The 4 questions at the end of that section are really well put. I can actually imagine a full class consisting of just reading through the text together and then a discussion with these 4 questions alone. Of course, if you are going to invite sharing, you'll be asking people to share about some really hard things that have happened to them. If you are going to invite that kind of vulnerability, you'll want to set this up sensitively. Sharing could be done in pairs or small groups to make it more comfortable, or you could invite 2 to 3 people in advance to be the ones to share their stories so that they can prepare and nobody is put on the spot, depending on the group of people that you have. Another way to approach this conversation is from a slightly different angle. You could ask for examples of people in the group when they've brushed up against this cause and effect worldview in the church. Maybe it was them experiencing an illness or disability. Or maybe someone commented to them in a time of grief. I think we've all likely heard stories about this kind of thing happening in the church. This would be a good opportunity for people to reflect on how pervasive this is and how unhelpful or even harmful it can be. One last thing that jumped out at me in the materials is mentioned on page 41. And that is to acknowledge that there are certain disabilities and illnesses that seem to garner more sympathy and accommodation than others. I think it would be worth acknowledging and even discussing that if you have time. Some brands of suffering, certain illnesses or disabilities, are still more attached to sin than others. Mental health diagnoses, including eating disorders, addictions, mood and personality disorders, neurological and developmental disorders such as autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, all of which can be quite invisible, but that still cause pain and challenges in daily life in a variety of ways. There are still so many things we don't understand about why many disabilities and illnesses happen, and the role of genetics, environment, and trauma when it comes to any one individual situation. In John chapter 9, we see Jesus clearly thwarting his disciples' attempts to judge by making a link between sin and sickness. Instead, Jesus expends the energy he has not by attempting to understand why or by judging. He greets the man with compassion and offers healing. May we who call ourselves his disciples spend the energy we have likewise by extending God's unconditional love and care to those who are in need of it. I hope these few minutes have been helpful and an encouragement to you. This is a really important and sensitive topic. May God give you both wisdom and openness for your leadership this week. And may it go well with you and with those who you are leading. See you next week.